Alright, the date is now June 3rd, 2012. And this is actually the second day here of our Raccoon Beach. But this is the first time I've gotten to make a video. I tried yesterday and it would not upload. So we're going to make an abridged version here today that's a little shorter. So as you can see, the 4 baby raccoons greatly enjoy playing and splashing in the water and removing all the toys. They are now estimated to be about 8 weeks of age. Come here. And of course, we don't know for sure exactly how old they are. They were orphaned, and they will be returned to the wild once they have grown up and learned the skills that they need to survive in the wild. And that's actually a pretty lengthy process, and what you're observing here are just the beginnings of that. If you're joining us for the first time here, I did want to introduce the raccoons. This is, I believe, their 6th video. And these 4 guys, they're all named for Klingons from Star Trek. And the reason for that, it's a bit of a play on words. They do cling on, as in to clothing and such. So that's why they're named after Klingons. The girls are Lursa and B'Etor, and the boys are Martok and Gowron. Now, as they have grown, it becomes a little harder to tell them apart from a distance. By the way, they've started wrestling like this I think this is the 3rd day now that I've observed them wrestling. Prior to that, they did not really interact much with one another. They just would kind of climb and otherwise play around in their environment without really wrestling or chasing one another, any of those kinds of things. So all this that you're observing are very new developments here as these guys get a little bit older and start exploring their world and playing more. So let's see, we were going to attempt to identify them here, so I'll go ahead and do that. Now this one here, right there, is almost certainly B'Etor. She's the smallest of the bunch. She's a female. And you see that she too is quite playful with the others. And this little guy who's over here and has that little duck in his mouth, he is Martok. Now he's the smaller of the 2 males. He can be identified because he has a longer face and kind of a more angular look about him. And as he's grown up, he's kind of lost a lot of that angularity to his face, but it's still there. You can still kind of tell him apart from the others. He's known for being the most exploratory, so his nickname is Martok Magellan, because he's always exploring around. Whereas B'Etor, the one I previously introduced, is known for being the sweetest of them, the most docile, and when they were little, their eyes were still closed, and the others would squall and scream to be fed, and they were quite unruly. She was always, she kind of would just sit there and blink at you, like real peaceful like, so that's always been her personality, and she's maintained that, actually, that quietness about her, by comparison to the others. Now for the 2 larger guys here, they get a little tricky to identify just because one of them is really getting close to the other in size. So the largest of all, whom just from here it would appear to be this one, is Lursa. She is a female. She does actually outweigh the others by about 100 grams, but for some reason they tend to look, well, at least one of them tends to look pretty similar to her in size. And that would be Gowron, who would be then this guy here. And Gowron, like I said, is the closest to Lursa in size. He's a male, and he is most known for, honestly, for being a screamer. When he was little especially, he would scream like crazy to be fed, and has always been kind of impatient to get his food. He was also the first to begin wrestling, and he seems to take it the most seriously of all of the babies. So he's our wrestler, and he's also our impatient guy. So those are our raccoons here, and like I said, they're about 8 weeks old now. So as they grow, a lot of things will change about their personalities, so we can definitely observe that. Now, I did want to say a few things about raccoons if I get a chance to do so. I see here that my battery is dying. I've never really done that before, but I thought I might as well. So anyways, if you're living in the United States, you most likely know quite a lot about raccoons, or at least you've seen them quite often. They're very common, even in urban areas. They're considered a lot of times a pest in cities, and also in places like campgrounds, farm fields, things like that, just because they are so well adjusted, well adapted to our world here. And they can get into trash really well, even if it's in a trash can tied shut with a bungee cord. That's in part because they have such tremendous manual dexterity here. Their hands are so sensitive, and in fact, they use their hands to pry apart things to find food, even in the wild, where, by the way, in the wild they get a lot of their food from the water, so that's why this is a useful play for them. They have to pry open shells and crack things and do stuff like that. And that's why they actually moisten their hands when they're feeding. They don't actually wash their food per se. What they actually are doing is getting their hands wet. And the reason they're getting their hands wet is so that they're even more sensitive. It increases the sensitivity of their hands and their fingers so they can better get to their food. Now, like I said, they're oftentimes pretty abundant in our urban areas, campgrounds, around farms, and people see them a lot getting into the food, getting into the garbage, and those kinds of things. They're extremely intelligent animals. Some studies have indicated that they're about as smart as the rhesus monkeys and some other primates as well. They are not, of course, primates. What group they belong to, it's called, now I don't exactly know how to pronounce this because I'm really not the expert on raccoons. I believe it's pronounced Procyonids. So they are Procyonids. They are not related to, of course, primates, nor do they look like primates. They're just about as intelligent as certain monkeys. Their closest relatives, now there are actually some other species of raccoons, and those other species of raccoons, they live on tropical islands, and the other species that are most closely related to them are like the coatimundi and the ringtail and the coati. And those species, they all live, as far as I know, they live in Mexico and or perhaps further to the south. They do not live here, so I'm not extremely familiar with them. But those are their closest relatives. Come on, guys. Oh my, they're really wet today. And let's see, so we've gotten intelligence and ability to look for food in a lot of different places. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to say about these guys, just because I've never really said much about them and their lifestyle before. But in the wild, baby raccoons do actually stay with their mothers for up to 1 year. The babies are oftentimes born in the spring. Now, sometimes there's a litter born later. But generally speaking, I'm trying to get these toys and throw them back in. Generally speaking, they're born in the springtime. And they stay with their mom for up to a year, which means that they will stay with her until about the following spring. So they'll overwinter with her and everything. The reason that they have such a long juvenile period like that, and of course, most intelligent animals, that is the case for them. They do stay with their parents for, or in this case just their mothers, for a very long period of time so that they can learn the skills they're going to need to survive, because their lifestyle requires a lot of intelligence with their foraging activities and the wide variety of foods that they eat, and so on and so forth. So honestly, as far as I'm aware, that's the case with really all intelligent species, is this prolonged juvenile period where they stay with their parents and they learn. They learn, of course, through play. They learn through observing her and through exploring their world. So I've got to end this video now because it's getting long again. I don't want it to be rejected again by YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude, but this that's the baby raccoons and the Raccoon Beach. And again, they are estimated to be about 8 weeks of age at the moment.